My wife publicly flirted with other men at a neighborhood barbecue until I exposed her backup plans, took control, and forced her to choose our marriage. 10 feet away from you at a neighborhood barbecue, laughing like a teenager at some guy's mediocre jokes, while completely pretending you don't exist. That's exactly what happened to me last Saturday, and it changed everything between us forever. We'd been married for 7 years, and I thought I knew all her games by now, but this was bold even for her. The new neighbor had moved, and 3 weeks ago, some finance guy in his 30s who drove a BMW and apparently thought our suburban cookout was his personal dating app. I was manning the grill, flipping burgers for about 15 neighbors when I noticed her gravitating toward him like a moth to flame. At first I figured she was just being friendly. You know how it is. New neighbor, community spirit, all that. But then I saw her body language change. She started touching her hair, leaning in way too close when he talked, and doing that fake laugh she reserves for when she wants something. The same laugh she used on the car salesman when we bought her Honda last year. The laugh that usually preceded me writing a bigger check than I planned. But here's the thing that really got me. She kept glancing over at me to make sure I was watching. This wasn't accidental flirting or innocent conversation. This was a performance designed specifically for my benefit. The guy was eating it up naturally, who wouldn't? She's attractive, charming when she wants to be, and she was laying it on thick. They stood by the drinks table, her hand occasionally brushing his arm while she grabbed another wine cooler. Meanwhile, I'm over here cooking for the entire block like some kind of hired help. 20 minutes into this little show, our neighbor Janet walked up to me with a concerned look. "Everything okay between you two?" she asked quietly, nodding toward the spectacle by the drinks. "Define okay," I replied, not taking my eyes off the burgers. But inside, I was calculating. This wasn't random behavior. She'd been testing boundaries lately, staying out later with co-workers, being mysteriously busy on her phone, giving me attitude when I asked simple questions about her day. I'd been patient, maybe too patient. But this public display, this was her throwing down a gauntlet. Then came the moment that sealed her fate. The finance guy mentioned he was single and new to the area. Without missing a beat, my wife turned toward me with this smug little smile and called out loud enough for half the party to hear. Well, who knows? Maybe someone here will be going single soon, too. The conversation around us died. Janet actually gasped. Even the finance guy looked uncomfortable, probably realizing he'd wandered into some kind of marital minefield. But me? I just smiled, set down my grilling spatula, and walked over to them with the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. "Interesting question," I said, looking directly at the finance guy. "Are you married?" "No," he answered, clearly confused about where this was heading. "Well, then you're in luck," I continued, my voice steady and loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "because someone here is definitely going single real soon." My wife's smug expression faltered. "Who?" she asked, probably expecting me to back down or make some weak joke to diffuse the tension. I looked straight into her eyes, smiled, and said with perfect clarity, "You." The silence that followed was deafening. You could practically hear the collective intake of breath from everyone within earshot. Her face went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Confusion, shock, anger, then something that looked almost like fear. I turned back to the grill without another word, leaving her standing there with her new friend, who suddenly seemed very interested in finding someone else to talk to. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and everyone at that barbecue knew it. She tried to approach me twice over the next hour, but I had nothing to say to her. When she attempted to play it off as a joke to the other neighbors, I simply shrugged and said, "Some jokes reveal more truth than people realize." By the time we packed up to head home, the finance guy had already made his excuses and left early. My wife rode home in complete silence, probably trying to figure out how her little power play had backfired so spectacularly. That night, as she tried to bring up the misunderstanding at the barbecue, I stopped her mid-sentence. "There was no misunderstanding," I said calmly. "You made a choice today. You decided to publicly disrespect me and our marriage for some stranger's attention. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice." She opened her mouth to argue, but I was already walking upstairs. The game had changed, and for the first time in our marriage, I was the one setting the rules. What she didn't know yet was that this was just the beginning. Her little performance at the barbecue had opened my eyes to patterns I'd been too trusting to see before, and unlike her, when I make a move, I make sure it counts. Sunday morning arrived with her first attempt at damage control. I was having coffee and reading the news when she appeared in the kitchen wearing that apologetic expression she pulls out when she needs something. "We need to talk about yesterday," she started, using her soft, reasonable voice. "I think you completely misunderstood what happened." I didn't look up from my tablet. Did I? Yes. I was just being friendly to the new neighbor. That's what good neighbors do. You turned it into something it wasn't. Now that was interesting. She was going with the innocent victim angle. I sat down my coffee and finally looked at her. "So, when you announced that someone would be going single soon, that was just neighborly conversation?" She had the audacity to roll her eyes. "I was joking around. You know, I have a playful sense of humor. Everyone knows that." Janet didn't seem to think it was funny. Neither did the finance guy, considering how quickly he disappeared after our chat. She shifted tactics immediately. The soft voice vanished, replaced by her defensive tone. "You embarrassed me in front of the entire neighborhood. Do you have any idea how that looked?" "How it looked?" I almost laughed. "You mean it looked like a husband who wasn't going to stand there while his wife flirted with another man and made jokes about our marriage ending?" I wasn't flirting. This time I did laugh. Right? All that hair touching, the giggling, the arm brushing, that was just aggressive friendliness. Her face flushed red. "You're being ridiculous and paranoid. Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so insecure that you can't handle me talking to other people." There it was, the classic reversal move. Make the victim question their own perception of reality, but I'd been married to her long enough to see this playbook in action. "Interesting theory," I said, standing up from the table. "Let me test it." I walked to her purse, which was sitting on the counter, and picked up her phone. "What are you doing?" Her voice pitched higher, a sure sign she was panicking. "Just checking something. If you were really just being friendly, you won't mind me seeing your text messages, right?" She lunged for the phone. "That's private. You can't just go through my personal stuff." I held it out of her reach, not hard to do since I'm 6 inches taller. "Why not? Married couples share everything, don't they? Unless there's something you don't want me to see." "Give me my phone." She was almost shouting now. "Or what? You'll go tell the finance guy about how mean your husband is being?" That stopped her cold. Her face went pale, and for the first time since yesterday, she looked genuinely scared. "You're acting crazy," she whispered. I set the phone back down without opening it. "I don't need to read your messages. Your reaction just told me everything I needed to know." She grabbed the phone and clutched it against her chest like it contained state secrets, which, based on her panic, it probably did. "This is insane. You're treating me like a criminal over nothing. I leaned against the counter, studying her face. "Let me ask you something. If I spent yesterday afternoon ignoring you while I flirted with some attractive woman, then announced to a crowd that someone might be going single soon, how would you react?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, opened it again, then apparently thought better of whatever she was about to say. "That's different," she finally managed. "How?" Because you're a man. It's different when men do it." I had to admire the audacity. She was actually trying to claim that marital respect was somehow gender-specific. "So let me understand this correctly. You can flirt with other men and joke about our marriage ending, but if I did the same thing, that would be unacceptable." I didn't flirt with anyone, right? We're back to that. I finished my coffee and rinsed the mug. "You know what? You're absolutely right. This is all just a big misunderstanding on my part." She looked relieved, probably thinking she'd successfully gaslit her way out of consequences. "I'm glad you finally see that." "Oh, I see it clearly now. I see that you think I'm stupid enough to believe your version of events. I see that you think you can manipulate your way out of accountability. And I see that you're comfortable lying to my face while clutching your phone like it's going to explode if I touch it." Her relief evaporated. "That's not what I meant. Here's what's going to happen," I continued, my voice calm but firm. "You can keep telling yourself that yesterday was innocent fun. You can keep your secrets and your locked phone and your victim act, but don't mistake my knowledge of what really happened for acceptance of it." I headed toward the garage. "I'm going to Home Depot. When I get back, maybe you'll be ready to have an honest conversation. Or maybe you'll keep playing games. Either way, the days of me pretending not to notice are over." As I backed out of the driveway, I could see her through the kitchen window, phone pressed to her ear. She was already making calls, probably to her sister or her best friend, spinning her version of events and painting me as the unreasonable one. What she didn't know was that I'd been paying a lot more attention to her patterns than she realized. The late nights working, the mysterious phone calls that ended when I walked into the room, the new clothes, and sudden interest in the gym. Yesterday's performance wasn't the beginning of something new. It was just the first time she'd been careless enough to do it in public. But two could play the strategic game. While she was busy doing damage control with her friends, I had some research of my own to do, starting with a conversation with Janet, who'd witnessed everything yesterday and clearly had some thoughts about what she'd seen. Time to find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. Janet was watering her front garden when I pulled back into the driveway 2 hours later. Perfect timing. I grabbed my Home Depot bags and walked over to the fence between our yards. "How's the damage control going over there?" she asked with a knowing look. "About as well as you'd expect." According to her, I completely misunderstood innocent neighborly conversation. Janet snorted. "Neighborly, is that what we're calling it now?" She set down her watering can and lowered her voice. "Can I be honest with you? Yesterday wasn't the first time I've noticed her behavior. That got my attention." "What do you mean?" "Well, there was that incident with the UPS driver last month. She was out there in workout clothes that barely qualified as clothing, chatting him up for 20 minutes about a package that could have been signed for in 30 seconds. I remembered that day. She'd mentioned the delivery took forever because the driver was so thorough about explaining the tracking system. And then there was the appliance repair guy," Janet continued. "Took him 3 visits to fix your dishwasher, right? Funny thing is, my husband fixed the exact same problem on ours in 10 minutes with a YouTube video. The pieces were clicking into place. 3 repair visits for a simple dishwasher issue, each time. She'd insisted I didn't need to take time off work because she could handle it. I didn't want to say anything before," Janet added. "But after yesterday's little show, I figure you deserve to know what the neighborhood's been seeing." I thanked Janet and headed inside, my mind racing. She was on the phone again, pacing the living room and speaking in hushed tones. When she saw me, she quickly ended the call. "That was my sister," she announced like I'd asked. "She thinks you're being unreasonable about yesterday." "I'm sure she does. Family loyalty and all." I set my bags down and studied her face. "Tell me about the dishwasher repair guy." She froze mid-step. "What about him? How many visits did it take to fix it?" I don't remember exactly. What? 3 visits for a problem that apparently takes 10 minutes to fix with the right YouTube video." Her defensive walls went up instantly. Some repairs are more complicated than they look online. Not everyone's a handyman, right? And the UPS driver last month, the one who needed 20 minutes to explain package tracking. She was getting that trapped animal look again. I was being polite. "What's wrong with friendly conversation?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing." I pulled out my phone. "In fact, I think we should have more friendly conversations. Starting with some people you might not expect." "What are you talking about?" I showed her my phone screen, which displayed the contact information for her company's HR department. "Your boss called while I was out. Something about you missing the quarterly meeting on Friday. Interesting, since you told me you had to work late that night." The color drained from her face. There was a mix-up with the schedule, was there? Because according to your boss, the meeting was mandatory and you never showed up. But your location data shows you were at that new wine bar downtown until 11 p.m. She stared at the phone like it had personally betrayed her. "How do you know about my location data?" "Family sharing plan. Remember, we set it up for safety reasons." Funny how technology works both ways. I scrolled through the location history, which painted a very interesting picture of her activities over the past few months. Multiple visits to restaurants and bars during work hours, shopping trips to Victoria's Secret that she'd never mentioned, and several long stops at addresses I didn't recognize. "You've been busy," I said, noting her expression. "Very social schedule for someone who's supposedly overwhelmed at work." She made a grab for my phone, but I was ready for it this time. "Give me that. You're violating my privacy, our family plan, our shared account." "But you're right about privacy. We should definitely respect each other's privacy going forward." I walked to our bedroom and returned with her laptop bag, which is why I think you should start keeping your personal communications on your own devices with your own accounts. "What are you doing?" "Helping you maintain your privacy. This laptop belongs to both of us. Paid for with our joint account, so technically, anything on it is community property." I opened it and navigated to the browser history. "Let's see what kind of private browsing you've been doing." She lunged for the laptop, but I closed it and held it away from her. "Interesting. You seem very concerned about me seeing something that's supposedly innocent. You're acting like a psychopath. This is marriage, not a police investigation." "You're right. In a marriage, partners are supposed to trust each other. They're supposed to be transparent about their activities and honest about their interactions with other people. I set the laptop down and looked directly at her. So, let's try this again. Yesterday at the barbecue, were you flirting with the finance guy? No. Were you trying to make me jealous or test my reaction? Of course not. Have you been having inappropriate conversations or interactions with other men? This is ridiculous. That's not an answer. It's an evasion. She crossed her arms and glared at me. I don't have to answer these questions. You're not my interrogator. No, I'm your husband. Or at least I was until yesterday when you announced to the neighborhood that someone would be going single soon. That hit home. Her defiant posture cracked slightly. I was just joking around. I didn't mean anything by it. Here's the problem with that defense, I said, pulling up a chair. Everything else I've discovered suggests that yesterday wasn't a joke. It was just the first time you were careless enough to do it in public. I gestured toward the laptop. So, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Easy way, you tell me the truth about what's been going on. We figure out if this marriage is worth saving, and we move forward with honesty. Hard way, I start digging deeper into your activities, your communications, and your timeline, and we let the evidence speak for itself. She sat down heavily on the couch, her fight deflating. For a moment I thought she might actually come clean. Then her phone buzzed with a text message. She grabbed it eagerly, probably hoping for rescue from one of her allies. But as she read the message, her face went white. Who's that from? I asked. She clutched the phone to her chest again. Nobody important. Really? Because you look like you just saw a ghost. She was silent for a long moment, staring at the floor. When she finally looked up, there was something different in her eyes. Not defiance or manipulation this time. Fear. We need to talk, she said quietly. I've been waiting for that conversation since yesterday. No, you don't understand. There are things, complications you don't know about. Now that was interesting. What kind of complications? She looked at her phone again, then back at me. The kind that could make this whole situation a lot worse than you think. Complications. I leaned back in my chair, studying her carefully. This should be interesting. She was still clutching that phone like a lifeline, which told me everything I needed to know about where this revelation was coming from. Look, there are some things I haven't told you. Some conversations I've had with people. People like the finance guy from yesterday. Not just him. She took a shaky breath. There have been others, but it's not what you think. I waited. Let the silence do the work. She was clearly struggling with how much to reveal, which meant there was a lot more to reveal. I've been exploring options, she finally said. Options for if our marriage doesn't work out. I wanted to know what else was available just in case. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd been shopping for my replacement while still married to me and somehow thought this would make things better. So yesterday's performance wasn't about flirting, I said slowly. It was about advertising that you were available. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I was just testing the waters in front of the entire neighborhood. While I was grilling food for everyone, I stood up and walked to the window. Tell me about these other options you've been exploring. There's this guy from my gym and someone from the coffee shop I go to downtown. Nothing physical happened. We just talked about possibilities. Possibilities? If you and I got divorced, would they be interested in dating me? That kind of thing. I turned back to face her. And what did they say? She looked uncomfortable. They were receptive. I bet they were. Free samples tend to generate interest. Her confusion was obvious. So, I clarified. You've been offering them a preview of what life with you would be like. Attention, flirtation, availability. Of course they're interested. The phone buzzed again. This time she ignored it, but I could see the notification on the screen. It was from someone named Mike. Let me guess, I said. That's gym guy or coffee shop guy? She nodded miserably. What's he saying? He heard about what happened yesterday. Someone saw us talking at the gym last week and put two and two together after the barbecue incident. This was getting better by the minute. Not only had she been shopping around, but she'd been careless enough that her backup plans were now exposed to community gossip. Your secret isn't so secret anymore. That's why I'm telling you now. People are going to start talking, and I wanted you to hear it from me first. How noble of her. What exactly is Mike's concern? That his potential new girlfriend comes with too much drama? She flinched. He thinks maybe we should cool things off until my situation gets resolved. Smart man. Unlike the finance guy who apparently doesn't know when he's walking into a minefield. Her phone buzzed again. Different name this time. Carlos. Coffee shop guy? I asked. She nodded. Let me guess. He's having second thoughts, too. He's concerned about the optics. His ex-wife already gives him grief about the kids, and he doesn't want to get involved in someone else's messy divorce. I couldn't help myself. I started laughing. This is beautiful. You spent months lining up your alternatives, and now they're all running for the hills because you got careless at a neighborhood barbecue. It's not funny, it's hilarious. You try to play chess, but you were so busy planning your endgame that you forgot about the middle game. Now you're stuck with a husband who knows exactly what you've been doing and backup plans who want nothing to do with your mess. She was crying now, but I wasn't feeling particularly sympathetic. What am I supposed to do? That depends. Do you want to save this marriage? Or do you want to see how well you handle being single without a safety net? I want to save it. I made mistakes, but I want to fix this. Really. Because 20 minutes ago you were still denying that anything inappropriate happened. Now suddenly, you want to work things out because your plan B fell through. That's not why, isn't it? I sat back down across from her. Let me tell you what's going to happen tonight. We're having dinner with your sister and her husband. You know, the ones you've been using as character witnesses against me. Why? Because I'm curious to hear what they think about your recent activities. Specifically whether they think exploring other options while married qualifies as the innocent behavior they've been defending. Her face went pale again. You can't tell them about this. Why not? Family should know the truth, shouldn't they? Especially family that's been giving marriage advice based on incomplete information. Please don't do this. Do what? Have an honest conversation with people who care about our marriage? I thought transparency was important in relationships. My phone rang. Perfect timing. It was her sister calling me directly. Should I answer this? I asked, holding up the phone. I bet she has some thoughts about yesterday's barbecue incident. Don't answer it. I swiped to accept the call and put it on speaker. Hey there, came her sister's voice. I heard there was some drama yesterday. Is everything okay? I looked directly at my wife as I answered. That's an interesting question. Define okay. Well, she called me pretty upset about how you reacted to her just being friendly with the new neighbor. Friendly? That's one way to describe. I watched my wife shake her head frantically. Tell me, if your husband spent an afternoon ignoring you while he flirted with another woman, then announced to a crowd that someone might be going single soon, would you call that friendly behavior? Silence on the other end of the line. Well, that's not exactly how she described it. I'm sure it wasn't. What else didn't she describe? The part where she's been exploring options with other men in case our marriage doesn't work out. Or the part where those men are now backing away because they don't want to get involved in the drama she created. My wife was crying harder now, but I wasn't done. So yes, everything's fine. We're just having some very overdue, honest conversations about what marriage means and what behavior is actually acceptable between spouses. More silence from her sister. Maybe you two should work this out privately, she finally said. Great idea. We'll talk soon. I hung up and looked at my wife, who was staring at me like I'd just burned down her entire support network, which in a way I had. The silence stretched for a full minute after I hung up. She sat there, tears streaming, probably calculating her remaining options. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed completely. Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and straightened her shoulders. The victim act was officially over. I want a divorce. I raised an eyebrow. Do you now? Yes. This marriage is clearly over. You don't trust me. You're humiliating me in front of family and friends. And you're acting like some kind of controlling psychopath. Interesting strategy. When caught cheating, blame the spouse for discovering it. I wasn't cheating. And even if I was considering other options, can you blame me? Look how you're treating me. She was building momentum now, probably thinking this nuclear option would scare me into backing down. I'll file first thing Monday morning. I'm sure any judge will see how unreasonable you've been about this whole thing. I nodded thoughtfully. Monday morning, that's a solid plan. Her confidence faltered slightly at my calm reaction. I'll take half of everything, the house, the savings, the retirement accounts. Maybe more, considering your behavior. And I'll make sure everyone knows exactly how paranoid and controlling you became over nothing. Right? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through some notes. Speaking of divorce, I had lunch with Tom Harrison last week. The name hit her like a physical blow. Tom Harrison was the best divorce attorney in town. You what? Great guy. Very thorough. We had a fascinating conversation about marriage, trust, and what constitutes marital misconduct in this state. She was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You see, Tom explained that exploring romantic options while married, even without physical contact, can be considered emotional infidelity, especially when there's evidence of intent to pursue those relationships. I showed her my phone screen, which displayed a folder labeled Evidence, location data showing visits to bars and restaurants during work hours, browser history showing searches for divorce lawyers and dating advice, text message records that I'm sure tell a very interesting story. Her mouth was opening and closing like a fish out of water. But here's the really interesting part. I continued. Tom said that in cases where one spouse has been secretly planning to leave while maintaining the marriage under false pretenses, the courts tend to be very unsympathetic to claims for alimony or significant asset division. She sat down heavily. You can't prove anything, can I? Mike from the gym seems very chatty about your conversations. So does Carlos from the coffee shop. Turns out when men think they're going to be dragged into a messy divorce, they become surprisingly cooperative about providing details of their interactions with married women. That was a bluff, but her reaction told me I was close to the truth. You're bluffing. Try me. File on Monday. Let's see how your claims of innocent behavior hold up when Tom starts deposing your workout buddy and your coffee date about the nature of your conversations. She was quiet for a long moment, probably realizing that her nuclear option had just been turned against her. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want my wife back. The one who respected our marriage enough not to shop for replacements while wearing my ring. And if that's not possible, I shrugged, then I want a clean divorce where we both walk away with our dignity intact. But that ship might have sailed when you decided to make our private business public at a neighborhood barbecue. Her phone buzzed again. This time she didn't even look at it. Those guys aren't texting to ask you out, I said. They're texting to make sure you don't drag them into whatever legal mess you're about to create. She picked up her phone and scrolled through several messages, her face getting paler with each one. They're all backing out, she whispered. Smart men. They recognize a sinking ship when they see one. She looked up at me with something that might have been respect for the first time in months. How long have you known about the emotional affairs? A few weeks. About your contingency planning? Since this morning? About how spectacularly you'd miscalculated your position? About 5 minutes ago when you threatened to divorce me first. She set her phone down and really looked at me. So, what happens now? Now you decide whether you want to be married to me or single without a safety net. But whatever you choose, the games are over. She stared at her phone for another minute, reading through the messages from her backup plans. Each one was some variation of, this is too complicated or I don't want to get involved. Her carefully constructed safety net had completely collapsed. I choose marriage, she said finally. Do you? Or are you just choosing the least damaging option now that your alternatives have evaporated? She flinched but answered honestly. Both, but mostly marriage. I realize how close I came to losing everything. Good, because here's how this works going forward. I pulled out a sheet of paper I prepared during my Home Depot trip. Full transparency. Phones, computers, social media, everything's open. No passwords I don't know. She nodded. Second, your gym membership gets canceled. Your coffee shop visits end. Any man you've had inappropriate conversations with becomes off limits permanently. What about work? Professional interactions only. No lunch meetings, no after-work drinks, no personal conversations that aren't directly work-related. She was about to protest, then seemed to think better of it. Third, family therapy. Weekly sessions with someone who specializes in rebuilding trust after emotional infidelity. I agree to that. Fourth, your family and friends get the real story. No more painting me as the controlling husband who overreacted to innocent behavior. That one hurt, but she nodded. And finally, I said, looking directly at her, you acknowledge publicly that your behavior at the barbecue was inappropriate and disrespectful to our marriage. Publicly? We're hosting another neighborhood gathering next weekend. You're going to apologize. To me in front of the same people who witnessed your little performance. She was quiet for a long moment. And if I do all this, then we rebuild? But understand, there's no going back to the way things were. You burned that bridge when you decided to treat our marriage like a backup plan. What does that mean? It means you earn trust back gradually. It means you prove through actions, not words, that you're committed to this marriage. And it means you accept that some consequences are permanent. She absorbed this, then asked the question I've been waiting for. What if I hadn't gotten caught? What if those men hadn't backed away? I smiled. You think I didn't have a plan for that scenario too? Her eyes widened. Tom Harrison wasn't just giving me legal advice. He was helping me prepare for multiple contingencies. If you'd actually left me for one of your options, you'd have discovered that I'd been documenting everything for months. You were planning to divorce me? I was planning to protect myself from someone who was clearly planning to divorce me. There's a difference. She slumped back on the couch. I really messed this up, didn't I? Completely. But here's the thing. You're not the first wife to get bored and start looking around. You're just the first one, careless enough to do it at a neighborhood barbecue while your husband was 10 feet away. Despite everything, she almost smiled at that. So, we try again? We try again, but on my terms this time. Because your terms led us here. She nodded and extended her hand. Deal. I shook it. Deal. But remember, trust is like a vase. Once it's broken, you can glue it back together, but it's never quite the same. I understand. 3 months later, she kept every commitment. The apology at our next neighborhood gathering was awkward but genuine. Therapy was difficult but productive. And slowly, very slowly, we started rebuilding something that looked like a marriage. But she was right about one thing. It was never quite the same. The difference was this version was built on honesty instead of assumptions, on respect instead of complacency. I know many of you listening to this are probably thinking I'm crazy for taking her back. Maybe you're even calling me weak or stupid for giving her another chance after everything she did. Trust me, I get it. Part of me wondered the same thing. But here's what I learned. Sometimes the strongest move isn't walking away. Sometimes it's setting boundaries so clear that the other person has to choose between respecting them or losing everything. I kept her, but I kept her on my terms. And I stay alert. Always one step ahead, always watching for signs. The trust will never be the same. That's true. But the fact that she's been genuinely trying for months now, that she's actually changed her behavior instead of just promising to change, that tells me something about her character that I didn't see before. Some battles are worth fighting. This one was worth winning. And she never again asked who was going single, because now she knew the answer would always be the same. Anyone who didn't appreciate what they already had. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.